processes, solving problems, and improving product service and product process quality. 2, find the root causes for problems. This commitment to finding the root causes of cause and effect issues in work process not only uncovers opportunities for improvement, but strongly demonstrates what total quality is all about. A famous saying is relevant here. For want of a nail, the shoe was lost. For want of a shoe, the horse was lost. For want of the horse, the rider was lost. For want of a rider, the battle was lost. For want of the battle, the war was lost. 3, set measurements for process control and defect prevention. The manager places emphasis on in-process control rather than on inspection at the end of the process. Also, searching for the root causes of issues, not being satisfied with easy or simplistic answers until the why of a problem is answered, will help uncover the real causes of problems in the team's work processes. 4, set measurable goals based on customer requirements. The ultimate goal is to anticipate and respond to the customer's needs in the design and manufacture of the organization's products and services. This means acquiring the best possible understanding of what the customer desires. The task is to put emphasis on the use of the process to achieve improved results rather than results alone. 5, document work processes. In order to bring focus and purpose to its processes, the manager begins by having his team document their work process. This provides excellent documentation for evaluating how the various steps of a process relates to one another and for uncovering loopholes which are the potential sources of trouble. Many managers today look back longingly at the old days when managing was easier, when companies only had to focus on making their numbers. Today, managers know that businesses cannot live by financial measurements alone. In the new world of process management, organizations are employing broad-ranging performance indicators, financial and non-financial. And as a result, their managers are learning how to manage complex systems and processes that involve many departments and functions. It is the responsibility of managers to ensure that these measurements are done and that they point the way to more productive practices. This is especially important if you desire to achieve excellence in your customer service. We'll talk about how excellence in customer service responds to the global competition in the next segment.
We are now going to start with our first question and answer session. We will try to answer as many questions as possible. Please ask only one question per phone call, and please be as brief as possible. You may call directly at the studio or at the phone numbers that appear on your screen right now. There is a fax number there as well. The first question is coming via fax, and it's coming from Key Tech Sao Paulo, KTV. It's to be successful with a customer service program, is it necessary to change the organizational identity or culture? That is, the values, the culture, and the paradigms that are a very important part of the organizational life. In your experience, what is the strategy to change the organizational identity in large organizations?
Good question. Change is around us all of the time, whether we do anything or not. Our customers' values and expectations are changing, our organizations are changing, so in fact, tomorrow will be different than yesterday. The key for organizations in this new economy is having some control of that change. That is, putting in a control of moving in the right direction. In other words, finding your own way for your own organization. That starts, I think, with having a clear vision of where you want to go, having a clear understanding of how your organization is operating today and how it will need to operate in the future if you're going to reach your vision. Secondly, is that vision something that your customers are willing to pay for? Do they see value in where you're going and what you're doing? And so one of the major cultural changes for most of our organizations is to learn to connect with our customers, to get information from them, to be able to respond to them in very real time.
Now we're going to Mexico, and we have a phone call coming from Veracruz, Guadalajara, Jalisco. Good morning. When you are managing, what methodology are you going to suggest for us to identify the problems and the causes of these problems in an organization?
Oh, that's a very good question. I don't want to sound flippant, but it is empowerment. It is getting closer to the people doing the work and encouraging them to be able to identify those problems. I've used the word processes a great deal. If you have not documented the work processes and in some form of flow chart, for example, and don't clearly understand all of the steps and investments that you are making in a work processes, it's going to be very difficult for you as the manager to understand how work is done. People performing the work will have equal difficulty in understanding how they can improve it, even though they're close to it, if they don't also have a sense of the flow of that work. So one of the things that I think you want to do is to have that documented and then, in fact, encourage and work with your employees to make the recommendations on how to solve the problems that they deal with.
And now from Mexico, we're going to Panama, and this question comes via phone. Somebody from the Technological University of Panama. Good morning. Buenos días. This comes from Felipe Rodriguez, S.A. Can you describe the steps to plan a strategic process and the relationship with benchmarking, re-engineering, and total quality management?
I'll try. Good morning, Panama. That's a big question. First of all, re-engineering, I tried to describe three things that are sort of basic in organizations today, I believe. One is a commitment to quality improvement, or to improvement within the organization to meeting your customers' requirements. Second is the empowerment of the organization, that is, giving employees both the will and the capacity to make those improvements, and then benchmarking as the tool for identifying where those improvements ought to be made and for determining the measures on how effectively you are doing that. Given that premise, given that basis, many organizations are entering into improvements, some of which are called re-engineering. Without the basics of those first three, it's very difficult to do a re-engineering, that is, the elimination of work processes and the elimination of bodies of people, if you don't know what the effects are going to be, if you're not removing that which is superfluous. It's very difficult to spell out a strategy, but I think the point that I want to make is if you were to look at something like the Bogan and English model of knowing exactly what you are trying to accomplish, whether it's business re-engineering, process re-engineering, or whether it's managed reform, or just simply trying to get a short-term gain, know what you're trying to accomplish and build a plan for getting there that works best for you.
And now we're going to Argentina through satellites, via satellite, and here we have a phone call from the University of Córdoba. Adelante la pregunta. We have two questions, and it's a twofold question. We have students and entrepreneurs in this auditorium. On the one hand, we would like to hear your thoughts on the following. You first specified the importance that of knowledge in our time, and that's above and beyond capital. And you also mentioned something about empowering people. So the question we have in this regard is, what is the role of the processes or productive systems, and what are the priorities? Because people cannot do something unless they have the adequate system. And in re-engineering wants to simplify things, and we believe that sometimes it's not necessarily the most important thing to simplify, but to reach a certain goal. And now we have another question that the entrepreneurs have. which is how to make people understand that teamwork is very, very important. Thank you.
Let me take the second part of the question first, if I may. How to convince people that teamwork is important. There's a saying that none of us is as smart as all of us, is sort of the core of the value of teamwork. One of the things that I think you can observe in many organizations throughout the world is that they are using re-engineering and empowerment as a means of streamlining or improving the communications within the organization. There are many corporations, my own included as an example, that has eliminated the office of president, and that office is now performed by a collaborative group of all of the major division presidents of the corporation. And the purpose of that is to, one, assure that there is unanimous opinion about the best actions to take, and that there is consensus for that, and that secondly, the communications passes through the organization more quickly. We are all observing the removal of middle management, the old-fashioned bureaucracy of organizations. And that means that people in the organization who perform the work at the bottom and the people who are helping to make the decisions need more knowledge about the work that is done and what customers expect. They need a sense of what the competency of the organization is and be able to how to strategically make use of that competency. When you start trying to get people to agree on consensus, I think the only way I know how that is done is through teamwork, through that kind of collaborative nature. We'll talk a little more in the second segment about competence or core competency and about the importance of knowledge, but I hope I have answered both of your questions.
And now from Argentina we go back to Mexico, and this question is coming from the Autonomous University, Tamaulipas, Mexico. Buenos días. Dr. Finnigan, in a globalized economy and in re-engineering processes, what is being done to generate the internal value for the client within the university, within the organizations, and within the organizational structure?
Most organizations are pursuing two things, and again in the second segment this will become a little clearer, but let me try and answer your question this way, which is a very good question, by the way. Value, and we use that term a lot, think of value in terms of an exchange of money that a customer provides for a service, and the customer expects broad value for that, more than just simply the product or the service that is received. I can fly many different airlines. I fly the airlines that are on time. I fly the airlines that don't lose my luggage, and I fly the airlines where people smile and are polite. And all of that represents value to me, and I think to many other people. Understanding what your customers see as value is one of the important ingredients of acquiring knowledge within the organization. You need to establish systems by one means or another by which you reach out to your customers and get information from them. That's one thing. The second is, how do you translate that value into work, and do your employees recognize the significance of that value? And that is part of letting them get closer. We'll talk more again in the second segment of the relationship between customer loyalty and employee satisfaction, because there is a distinct link. So the second sense of value is, how much do you know about what your employees think, what they value, what kind of feedback are you getting from them, which is also equally as important as the feedback from your customers.
This question is coming from Mexico, Chihuahua. Welcome. Bienvenidos. We're calling from the Technological Institute of Chihuahua. The question is, was your Xerox company the creator of the term benchmarking?
I don't know if we were the creator of the term. For people who are not familiar with it, benchmarking originally comes from surveying. It's the mark one would make on a stone or a rock when you were marking off property. Back in the 50s, benchmarking started to be used by people in the computer business when you were going to go buy a very large, expensive mainframe. You'd go out and set some specifications and maybe identify a capability that IBM had as the benchmark. And then others would come in and bid against that or provide services against that benchmark. We did start using the term in the 1970s as the expression of the strategy we were pursuing of going out and exchanging information with other organizations and a desire to learn who had the best practices. So, yeah, I suppose Xerox did. Thank you for asking, by the way.
Gracias por la pregunta. From Mexico, we're traveling to Costa Rica, and this is a question coming from the State University, Distance State University, San Jose, Costa Rica. Muy buenos días. Una pregunta, question for Dr. Finnigan. Can you talk about total quality management in an organization without having yet applied and adopted the culture and redefinition of the organization, of the redefining organizational identity?
That's an excellent question. See if I can try to answer that very succinctly. I personally believe that the transformation, the change in culture that total quality management to be successful requires, and again, remember what I said a few moments ago, re-engineering, I believe, rests upon the foundation of total quality management. To re-engineer an organization successfully will require that what we call total quality have been implemented. To do that, since it is significant cultural change and change in values, will require discipline and commitment. I have said to many organizations that unless the senior executive team of an organization is committed to manage the organization that way, you will not succeed. Said another way, it requires a benevolent dictator that says this is the way we're going to do it. If our CEO at Xerox hadn't said this is the way we're going to manage this organization, we would not have made that transformation. And that transformation took many years, 5 to 7 years, before it was apparent that it was going to succeed.
Damos ahora la bienvenida a Torreón, Coahuila.
Coahuila, the Ibero-American University from Mexico.
Siga México, Torreón, Coahuila, ¿lo escuchamos?
Adelante. Oh, we've lost the connection.
A una pregunta formulada vía fax del Instituto.
Here we have another question from Oaxaca, Mexico. Why would competing organizations want to exchange information? Why would they be interested in data exchange?
Many people ask that. The way to think about it is we talk about the new global economy. It is also called the knowledge economy. We are becoming an information society throughout the world. And so much of what we would have regarded as proprietary information a few years ago has now become the public domain. When in fact we are providing services and products that are of equal value, what differentiates why a customer selects us versus someone else is going to be how effectively we deliver other kinds of value to that customer. It is, since we're talking about information and since we're talking about society that moves very quickly, one of the best ways of learning what's happening is just simply exchanging information with one another. It's going to happen anyway. Our employees talk to employees of other organizations. It is not as though we're giving away patentable secrets, but we are in fact opening ourselves up to try to learn who does things best so that we can become the best. And more organizations throughout the world are accepting this as the reality of the new economy.
Y ahora vía satélite a Saltillo.
And now we are going to Saltillo, Coahuila, and we are linking via satellite. My question is the following. I think that excellency and global competitiveness is and must be applied to all of human endeavors. And so we would like to know whether or not there is some background or some information as far as educational institutions at all different levels have been able to apply these strategic principles that you have mentioned, and if that is the case, which institutions have been able to do so? Thank you.
I don't know that I know them all, but yes, there's an increasing application of these principles in the educational community. At the university level, I would think of, here in the United States, of the University of Oregon, the University of Minnesota, Carnegie Mellon, the University of Arkansas, the University of Texas. In secondary education, there are school districts and schools throughout the United States. Phoenix, Sacramento are two that readily come to mind. Arlington, Virginia is another. Boston, where they are, one, using site-based management principles of engaging faculty, parents, the management of the school in looking at everything they do in terms of how well they are serving their purpose, which is educating children, that are also using the same principle as means of removing superfluous expenses. In this country, education is under a real challenge in terms of its costs. City of Los Angeles, or the Los Angeles School District, is making very heavy investments in now a strategy of site-based management, which they call LEARN. So it is happening. It tends to come to the public sector more slowly and more difficultly because of the kinds of bureaucracy and laws that are involved. But it is happening.
Damos paso ahora a Cuautitlán, en el Estado de México. La pregunta la formulan desde la Universidad.
This is a question coming from Mexico, from the Autonomous University of Mexico, Cuautitlán. Welcome. By trying to find a world-class organization, what is the importance of the levels of hygiene and sanitary conditions in the organizations and in the finances?
That's a good question. I'm not sure I understand the last part about the finances, but let me take a pass at the former. And I'm assuming you're talking about hygiene relative to the working environment itself. I have to speak personally for my own organization. We survey our employees every year relative to their attitude and their satisfaction with many factors, one of which are the environment in which they work. And we try to react to that in terms of improving the facilities and providing the right tools. If you are working in a situation where you are concerned for your safety or for your health, or that you just find repugnant in some way, you're certainly not going to be able to commit to the work that you're doing. So yes, hygiene is extremely important. Physical conditions are extremely important. If you were talking about public law, in most organizations, I think understand what their local laws are and generally adhere to them. The question is whether those laws are as strict as they need to be. Yes, Herman.
And now, our greetings to the participants from Tabasco, Mexico. This is the question coming from Cemento Zapasco. Buenos días. Our question is as follows. What would be the processes or stages for a team, a high performance yield, to have a re-engineering, to have a new strategy?
I don't think I could give you that. By the way, is an extremely good question that a lot of people ask themselves all the time. If the term that is used in this country is high performance work systems. When has one achieved a high performance work system? I don't know that I know the answer to that. Team's development is about around the expression that I tried to use during the presentation when I said the capacity to act. We talk about bounded freedom. That is a negotiation between management and employees as to what kinds of responsibilities and freedom that the work team has over their work, over their environment, etc. And that there needs to be some very clear set of boundaries. In other words, you know what you can do, you know what you can't do. And that as the team masters its capability of acquiring resources, as an example, more efficiently, then those boundaries can be expanded and they can be, in fact, given additional responsibility. Their maturity as a team grows. And as that happens, then the issue of their capacity to do everything that they're asked to do. A high-performance work team, as an example, would be able to look at the skills and the capabilities of the members of the team and the kinds of things that they are being asked to do and the kinds of things they believe that they could do. And they may need to request additional resources in terms of additional people or special training, etc., to increase their capacity to act on behalf of the organization. Re-engineering their work by eliminating their positions or eliminating other positions, that kind of maturity and capacity depends upon the organization and the relationship between management and that work team. That is happening in many facilities throughout the country. We don't have time to get into it, but General Electric and its appliance facility in Louisville, Kentucky, as an example, is an excellent example of high-performance work systems improving the productivity of the organization.
Now we're going back to Torreón, Coahuila, and the question is coming from the Ibero-American University campus, La Laguna campus. Buenos días. The question is, faced with this new vision in which, what can you say about the client is always right? What can you comment on that? Where does that fit in?
I think it's compatible. It's almost the old expression, the customer is always right, almost got lost for a while. And it gets responded to in very simple ways. If I may tell the story, the Xerox learning experience is that we used to make copiers, and that our copiers didn't copy blue ink. And when people, particularly at banks, might comment on that or complain about that, our response was, buy pens with black ink. And that was very satisfactory until the Japanese produced copiers that copied blue ink. And we suddenly realized that maybe the customer was right. In terms of what we're talking customer value, that is just another way of saying the same thing. But the customer has expanded the definition of being right or their value to include factors that we perhaps haven't considered before around timeliness, around convenience, and certainly around reliability or quality. I hope that answers your question.
And now greetings to our participants from Mexico, from the Federal District. And this is coming from the Federal Commission of Electricity, Mexico, DF. Good morning. The question is, competitivity and globality have changed many things. Do you think we're going to win or lose the war with this new paradigm?
The jury is still out. I think we will win. I think we will see changes in the world economy that we haven't, that maybe a few years ago we found difficult to imagine. The second tier is moving up very rapidly. There are major investments that are taking place in East Germany and Vietnam. Certainly, despite recent difficulties in Mexico, corporations are rapidly learning that they are global in nature and multinational, and not always do our governments lead, but they often have to run and catch up with what's going on. I think we will succeed. I think there is probably more opportunity for world stability and prosperity over this new global economy and the information economy than anything we've seen before. But I tend to think the glass is always half empty.
Vamos ahora a Puerto Vallarta, en México.
We now travel to Puerto Vallarta in Mexico, and the question is coming from the university from Guadalajara.
Puerto Vallarta, Jalisco.
Bueno.
Sí, lo escuchamos.
Sí, buenos días.
Buenos días.
Mire, mi nombre es Selma Chávez, de Hotel Regina, del Centro Universitario de la Costa. Mi pregunta es...
My question is, can you define that the profile of an organization person, does the organization person have to be versatile and have multiple facets, multiple sides? Is that what we could say?
Good, very good question. By the way, I wish I was in Puerto Vallarta today, but any event. No, I think people who will succeed in this new economy